And welcome back. I hope everybody had a nice break. So we are back at it. And this is the home stretch for us here. So the next speaker we have today, I can't say anything higher than, she is amazing. She's been a personal inspiration to me. So let me introduce Keenan Skelly. She is the CEO of ShadowByte and director of the board of directors for the Women's Society of CyberJutsu. Ms. Skelly has more than 20 years' experience in providing security and strategic solutions across a wide array of platforms to include personnel, physical, and cybersecurity. She brings more than 10 years in government service with a focus on national and homeland security. Ms. Skelly served in the U.S. Army as an EOD or Explosive Ordnance Disposal Technician and went on to work for the Department of Homeland Security in the Office of Infrastructure Protection. In this capacity, she ran vulnerability assessments and exercises on critical infrastructure assets throughout the nation, helped develop the first systems assessments approach for critical infrastructure and key resources. In addition to her government service, Skelly has 10 years of experience with the private sector in technology and security business management and strategy. Her former roles include Director of Strategic Partnerships, VP of Sales and Marketing, VP of Global Partnerships, Chief Revenue Officer, CEO, and board member. Her expertise in business strategy, crisis management, cybersecurity, intelligence analysis, and homeland security make her admired and respected leader among her colleagues. Skelly has been recognized as one of the top 25 women in cybersecurity in 2019 by Cyber Defense Magazine, by the software report in the top 25 women leaders in cybersecurity, and one of the top female executives by Women's World Award in 2019. Skelly is also a mentor and coach for Cyber Patriot, Girls Who Code, and was awarded the Women's Society of CyberJutsu Mentor of the Year in 2019 and Top Woman in Cybersecurity 2020 by Cyber Defense Magazine. Let's welcome Keenan Skelly.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, hello. Your camera is off.
My camera's off. Oh, no. Okay. Well, that's not good. Give me one moment.
Okay.
See what happened here because it looked like everything was working perfectly. Let's see.
Ah,
How about now? Anything?
not yet.
Okay. This is unusual. Uno momento, por favor.
Uh-huh. Well, that's the beauty of live. So,
Sorry about that, guys. Give me just a second. I did just test this, but let's try again.
yeah, there you go.
There we go.
Wonderful.
Outstanding. Apologies for the technical issue there. Thank you, Eric, as always, very kind words and wonderful things that you've got going on. I want to give a big welcome to everybody that's here. This is such an amazing organization, an amazing effort. Diversity and inclusion is something that I've been very passionate about pretty much my entire life, and we'll get into that in a little bit more detail. But I definitely, again, I want to thank Eric and the team at Raices for putting this on because these are the kinds of grassroots movements that we're absolutely going to have if we're ever going to achieve true diversity in cybersecurity and information security. I also want to thank Congressman Correa, wonderful human being, really trying to do amazing things for our country in a variety of ways, especially when it comes building educational pipelines into cybersecurity and, of course, into AI, as he mentioned today. I also want to call out JC. Great talk. Even though you're an aviator and you're not as cool as an EOD tech like myself, it was still a very good talk. And from there, we'll kind of go ahead and get started. I am going to talk a little bit
Okay.
about myself, but I'm also going to talk about that in terms of kind of what we're discussing today in diversity. So let's go ahead and roll with slides.
All right. Well, take it away.
So our conversation today is going to deal about, the evolution of diversity and inclusion in information security. And it hasn't been like an easy road to get to where we are now, which is kind of scary when you think about where we are now. Minorities still represent ridiculously small amounts of, the population in infosec, but we have come a little bit. We've come further in some areas than other. So we're going to talk about that in more detail, but we're also going to talk about what it really means when we say diversity of thought, when we say diversity and inclusion. What do those things mean kind of on their own, and how can we really get into the depths of understanding what it means for each of us as individuals to provide diverse backgrounds, diverse comments, diverse, all the things. We're going to get into that. Next slide. So, this is something that has really been, like I said, very important to me over the last, you know, I don't know, 7 years specifically in cybersecurity, but for my entire life, I've always been kind of a unicorn in a room full of horses, which is not to say that the horses weren't amazing. It's just to say I wasn't like all the other horses. Being an EOD tech in the United States Army was particularly interesting. When I went through EOD school, I was only the fourth woman ever to do so. And I certainly had to deal with a lot of discrimination. I had to deal with a lot of individuals simply not knowing if they should deal with me differently, or if they had to handle me with kid gloves, or if I was going to be smart enough or strong enough to do all of the things that I had to do. So, since I was very young, diversity has been kind of a really big part of my life in terms of who I am and the things that I've grown into, but also my friends, my family, my colleagues. We all experience these kind of, situations. So, I really want to take a second to talk about who we are. And I'm going to give you the example of kind of my life. And I want you to think about this. I want you to think about this every day when you think about diversity and diversity of thought, because this is the underlying, piece that goes into all of that. What makes us diverse? Is it race or ethnicity? Is it religion or creed? Yeah, it definitely is those things, but it's not limited to that. So who I am, I've put here, and these are really wildly different, experiences. I am a woman. I'm a woman who's grown up and chosen fields that were led predominantly by men, and have been able to succeed within them. I'm a disabled veteran, so that opens me up to a whole new perception of what it takes to get into this field, because I know so many veterans who are trying to get into cybersecurity. I'm also hearing impaired. So when I look at cybersecurity issues or problems, I think about them from that perspective. Am I going to be able to, interact with this technology? Am I going to be able to understand this technology or this capability, being hearing impaired? Additionally, I'm also ADHD, like probably 90% of I'm sorry. I see JC over there causing trouble in the chat, and I'm just like, seriously, I was army. I was army. Um, but that by itself, having a neurodiverse kind of perspective on things is so crucial. And Congressman Correa talked about this, Eric talked about this. As we continue to build out diversity within the information security community and within cybersecurity, and quite frankly in tech generally, we have to be able to consider that diversity isn't just about your race or your religion. It's about who you are fundamentally as a person. Now, I am super annoying and persistent and curious. Oh my God, curious beyond belief. I will ask every question that can be asked, and I have no fear when it comes to that. I think that's the ADHD that kind of kicks in there. So, yeah, see, I knew they were going to do that. They're all going to say I'm annoying now, but it's true. I am. I'm super annoying because I'm curious about everything and I want to learn and I'm hungry for knowledge. And that is so, so important. But there are other things about my life that make me diverse and give me a different point of view as well. I am obsessed with Marvel and the MCU, and you can ask me any question about the comic books versus the movies, and I will be able to tell you. And yes, that's weird and to some people, but it's a part of me. I also am a gamer. So gamification and gamifying things has always been something that is really palpable for me and understandable for me. And I bring that to a lot of things that I work on. So as we talk about, what it means to have diversity of thought, it is not just your race. It is not just your religion. It is Thanos. Yeah, Thanos is totally a deviant. um, so it's everything else that we're doing. So I listed a few things here that have shaped me, that kind of shape my everyday life, and it's a tiny, tiny little list. It doesn't include all the cultural experiences that I've had. When you're in the military, you travel all over the world quite frequently. Not everybody does, but yes, Lisa, think like a gamer, act like a superhero. Yes, I love that. Um, but I want you guys to think as we start going through this presentation, just in general, and I'd like you to think about it right now. What other things contribute to you being who you are? It's individual experiences. It's the things you love, the things you hate, the biases that you innately carry that you don't know that you do. It is your goals, your desires, your hopes for yourself and your family and your future, and for a country and for humanity. So, when we talk about things like diversity of thought, I want everyone to kind of step outside their previously understood ideas of what that means and really think about everything that it is that makes you, you, or that makes me, me. Next slide. So fortunately for everyone, ooh, that looks like it slid away a little bit there. Fortunately for everyone, there's a corporate awakening happening right now. We're seeing companies like Microsoft and Amazon and others really step forward and say, we recognize that diversity and inclusion is incredibly important. And we also realize we haven't done a good job of incorporating it into the things we do. I like to use Microsoft as an example because I've been working with them as a partner for many, many years. And I've been able to see their transformation when it comes to inclusion and diversity, starting from very little kind of, push in that area to actually creating a corporate position for diversity and inclusion, a corporate vice president, and really pushing all of these things down into the workforce. The first conference that I went to where I really noticed an epic change was one of the Microsoft events where they had, when you picked up your badge, they had the first kind of he, she, them to really help people identify themselves. And they've started doing even more than that, where it comes to, I do not like to be touched, or I'm not going to shake your hand. So these kinds of things are really, really important, right? They're important for people to feel safe in the community. They're important for people to feel safe interacting in the community. And really, that's the kind of understanding and inclusion and empathy that we have to have. Now, I posted a little bit of information here about this corporate awakening that really is going to help all of us. And essentially, gender diverse companies are more likely to perform 15% better than other companies. That makes me really happy because I started this journey in cybersecurity in about 2015, 2016. And that number right there makes me really proud because I think that it's finally hitting home the importance of having this kind of diversity, especially with corporate America. More importantly, ethnically diverse companies are likely to perform 35% better. That's massive. So think about that. And I think about this a lot every day. If we're talking about 15% just to put women in, right? We're not even breaking down anything else. That's great. That's a great move forward. But 35% in performance by including ethnically diverse individuals, I mean, that's massive. That's massive. And no CEO today, myself included, no CEO can look at these numbers and say, we're just going to ignore that. We can't be a part of that. The cool thing is, in another study that happened lately, 85% of CEOs said having diversified and inclusive population improved their bottom line. Their bottom line. So this is a metric that is not just in like it's not affecting morale only. It's not affecting diversity of thought only. It's literally affecting the bottom line, and that's amazing. In at 2044, we are expected to see that all current minorities, and I feel like that's a lot of people that are listening right now, myself included. We all fall into minority groups of some kind, and by 2044, that whole paradigm is going to shift. We are going to become the majority. We are going to become the voices. We're going to become the future and how the future is built out. So really understanding what it means to have diversity of thought and work into that is absolutely paramount. Now, the last one is 86% of next gen workforce are eyeing companies who are aware of policies on diversion and inclusion. As someone who's hired a lot of people and somebody who's been through a lot of interviews in organizations that didn't necessarily have a culture that I understood, culture should be your first question. That should be what, as soon as they get to the point where, do you have any questions for me? And you should always have questions for them, by the way, all the questions, lots of questions. I like to lead with, do you like your job? That's a good one. But my second question is always, how do you feel about the culture of this company? And watching faces and watching responses will tell you that some companies have no idea what it means to have a culture that is inclusive, a culture that is diverse. And that's unfortunate. And I hope those companies get there. But if you are wanting to be taken seriously, if you're wanting to get into an environment where your voice counts, be careful to mind the organizations that you're getting into and take into consideration whether or not they put a focus on diversity and inclusion and whether or not that is the right focus. Now, I personally have also seen a lot of organizations that say, well, we're not going to do diversity just for diversity, but we've allocated some space to get these core demographics in. Okay, well, you're doing it wrong. You've already done it wrong by saying that you have to get these core demographics. What needs to be done for corporate America, for enterprise companies, is they need to look at this from a different perspective. They need to look at it as who is the right person for the job that doesn't necessarily fit this tiny, tiny, tiny little box of requirements that we've put out. Something that's really interesting, and I think somebody else mentioned this earlier today, in general, the average kind of middle-aged white man in America will apply for 90% of jobs that they're presented with because they believe that they can do any of that. They can do whatever job, right? When it comes to minorities and women, we tend to believe that we just don't have enough skill, that we don't check every single box that's on that resume or on that that call for job. We think that because we're missing this and this and this, that we are incapable of actually performing. And something JC said earlier that I really identified with is they're only taking a look at the things or at the applications that are being brought in. So if you apply to a job, if you apply to a scholarship, if you apply for anything, you're already ahead of the game because you're in the game. But, being able to start to change the dynamic in how hiring managers think and how universities think about bringing new talent in, that is something that is just now happening. Over the last 10 to 15 years, from government and military and corporate and now being on the board for Women's Society of CyberJutsu, I've seen growth. I've seen good things happening, but it's not enough and it's not fast enough. And this is one of the reasons we're falling behind on that gap, right? Next slide. Okay, Eric, I don't know what you did to my slides, but they look janky. So
Sorry.
Okay. Well, you guys should be able to get the deck afterwards, and you will see that there was not any of this craziness. So, a lot of people ask, what is the difference between diversity and inclusion? And I think this is really important because you're going to hear over, the course of your life, you're going to hear about programs that are diverse. You're going to hear about inclusive programs. Well, what does that even mean? And more importantly, what does it mean for you moving forward in this age where we try to bring in as many different types of folks that we can? So, diversity is the condition of having or being composed of differing elements. The inclusion of different types of elements is completely different. So, if you think about diversity, diversity is like the description of what you are. Being included is the verb, the action of people putting you in diverse situations or you putting yourself in diverse situations. So when we start to talk about, what it looks like to have a diverse team and an inclusive team, those are not always mutually exclusive. So you can have a very diverse team in terms of from your perception, or let's just say anybody's perception. I have a diverse team because I have a man and a woman, and I have a Black American, and then I have a Hispanic American, and yeah, we're good to go, right? That's it. But that's not fully inclusive, right? Being fully inclusive means that there are a lot more people on that list. LGBTQ, all of these different folks and ideas, different cultures, different people around the world, not just when we're talking about, what their ethnicity is, but their experiences in different cultures. That's critically important. And every time somebody says to you diversity and inclusion, I want you to think about that first slide that we kind of talked about, all of these things that make you who you are, that make you diverse and you completely different than anybody else in the world. Those are the things that they should be looking for. And if they're not, I would maybe take a second to be like, I don't know. I'll come back to you. Be empowered though. Be 100% empowered to say, this is who I am. I'm different. I'm different than anyone else you've ever met for all the reasons. And this is what I can bring to the table. And sometimes it's really scary if you don't know what it is you actually bring to the table. And I'm going to tell a couple of stories throughout this. So, when I was super young and stupid, and I came into EOD school, as I said, I was the fourth ever woman. Happy to say that now, many years later, 20 years later, there are more than 400 female EOD techs across the services, which is absolutely amazing, and I'm so happy for that. But when I came in, everybody kind of focused my male counterparts focused on the fact that I was a woman rather than on the other things that made me very interesting. For example, I could still whoop all of their butts at Call of Duty. I mean, that's just the thing that I do. And so looking outside the boundaries of what standard infosec has said, this is what equals diversity. When we're talking about diversity of thought and actually changing the paradigm in infosec and cybersecurity, it's not just that, it's who you are. So if you don't know who you are, how are you going to let other people know who you are? So I'm going to pound on that a couple of times. Identify yourself, identify the things that make you unique. And they're probably things that you don't think of every day, but you should. Next slide. So the lack of diversity, this is something that was said, in the latest Aspen report, as they talked about how diversity is really shaping the future. Lack of diversity blinds us so badly. I gave a talk on diversity and inclusion in 2015, 2016. And it baffles me that we're still talking about the same things. We're still talking about trying to get this inclusivity, trying to get this diversity. But what's really interesting to me is how many organizations out there, and probably organizations that you know, organizations that you work for, how many of them do not actually understand why diversity and inclusion is important. And this is something that has to be more than just, the elders of us, the old people going in and trying to convince corporate America to take this seriously. This also has to be grassroots. It has to be every single person that's listening to this right now has to be you standing up and saying, this is important. This is what I want from an organization. This is what I expect from an organization when it comes to your diversity culture and maybe your lack of it. Now, I know this is a hard thing to do. Like from experience, I know this is a really hard thing to do when you work in an organization who has maybe not the greatest culture, but people believe in the product, people believe in this, they believe in that. But there's an old adage that culture eats strategy every day. And I add my personal part of it and twice on Tuesdays because Tuesdays is when everything goes crazy. So it's important that culture be a part of something that you're doing. And as new people start to come in, as new ethnic groups, as new races and religions and creeds and individual experiences and neurodiversity, and as all of those things come in, we have to be the change for what's coming next. This chart that you see right here talks a lot about kind of the predictions and the percentage of changes in civilian labor from, since 1990. Now, if you look at each of these by year, you can see that the Hispanic and Latino community, for example, 1990 to 2000, that percentage jumped massively, but then it started to go like down, right? So my question, my challenge to all of you is while you cannot understand, while you cannot possibly understand all of the different types of, input and ideas and concepts that you're going to have throughout your life, know who you are now so that you can help drive yourself and other people forward. The fact that these numbers are kind of like declining for everybody is a little bit worrying for me. But I purposefully chose this older U.S. Bureau of Statistics report because it highlights everyone across the workforce, which is another important point. This isn't just happening in cybersecurity. It isn't just happening in infosec. It's not just happening in tech. It's happening everywhere. So while these numbers boomed, like really, really took, off in the 1990s to 2000s, overall, we continued to decline. Not cool. Next slide. Oh, again, you jacked up my slides, man. So this is a number that I really wanted to hit home with because it's important to me. And it's important that we start to understand these growth kind of strategies, right? So I'm sorry, I'm also reading the chat because I love what you guys are saying. But so in 2016, that's when I came fully into cybersecurity. And I wasn't doing anything else, national security, all of these. Well, I mean, I guess kind of, but I wasn't really doing the things I'd done before. There were only 11% of women. And now in 2021, there are 24% of women. And I'm super stoked about that because I know that myself and some of my amazing female colleagues at the Women's Society of CyberJutsu and WeSees and all of these things, sorry, that we've been pushing this at conference, at the boardroom, at the executive table, pushing for the fact that we need to get more women involved, interested. And then once we get them there, we need to be able to keep them there. This is a very specific problem with women is that we tend to get into cybersecurity jobs or infosec jobs, but there's no pathway for success. There's no outlined, hey, this is what I want in 5 years, and I want you as a company to help me get there. People don't ask that question. And so 4 or 5 years later, they leave. And then we continue this cycle of trying to get more women in. And unfortunately, many of them leave. So this is not just a let's get people into cybersecurity problem. It is getting people in cybersecurity who love cybersecurity, who enjoy what they do, who can be a part of an amazing culture and really, drive the next generation of inclusivity. Now, when I looked at the same kind of context of Hispanic and Latino, I went back to 2018, where only 4% of the cybersecurity workforce was Hispanic or Latino. And you probably all heard many times during the conversations and the talks today that it's still only 4%. So, what that tells me is we have spent, as a diverse community, I have spent a lot of time really focusing on how to get that number up for women. But that's not the only thing that we have to look at. We have so many different types of diversity to look at. And again, it's not just race, gender, creed. It's not just those things. So I'm really appreciative to Eric and Raices for doing this, because every community is built on the people that you relate to, the people that you identify with. I identify with people who play Call of Duty, and I will gladly take you on any day of the week. Let's go. But it's not just about these basic things that are about our humanity, it's about everything that makes us us. Next slide. Your path. All right, now I'm going to get on just my tiny, tiny little soapbox because I can. So, like I said, I started out my life as an EOD tech, and I was an EOD baby, which means that I came into the military specifically to blow shit up. And that was not taken very well by the folks that I went to EOD school with, because most of these guys were, 6 years, 7 years into their military career, and they were trying to get promoted. They were trying to move up. So they didn't really look at me with any kind of affection or understanding of what it was that I was trying to do. In fact, they pretty much, went out of their way to make sure that I understood that I wasn't welcome. And that's unfortunate, but it also drove me. It pushed me. It pushed me to say, yeah, okay, whatever. You guys actually suck at applied physical principles. You suck at PT. Like, I'm going to do this. And I know that I can. I'm persistent. I'm resilient and unstoppable if I want to be. That is your path. That has to be your path. When you are facing struggles that not everybody is facing, if you don't push forward, if you don't push forward fearlessly to create different paths, then the only people that are being hurt by that are you and those that come after you. So it's easy to say, well, I could never do that job. I could never start a organization, Raices, and really build it from nothing and create a community for Hispanic and Latino and Latinx. You could say that it's just impossible and I'm never going to be able to do it. Or you could jump in head first and build it and create it and make it happen. Make it happen. I know that a lot of people in this space think that you have to have a degree. You have to have, that 4-year degree. You have to have been in the military as, a blue teamer, red teamer, or highly, highly skilled in foreign networks. You may think that there's nothing that you can bring to the table because you don't have those things. And that is simply not true. Most of major corporate companies right now are doing away with requirements for a 4-year degree. Now, while some, that's going to help you tremendously, what I encourage you to be, what I encourage you to do in order to stay fresh and relevant is to be hungry. Be absolutely hungry about knowledge. Because when you find that thing that you really love, and there's so many facets of cybersecurity, so many facets of information security and AI and technology, that a lot of people don't understand all of the different things, right? But if you understand just a little bit about enough topics, you can start to learn what it is you really want to do. And that does not take a degree. It does not take a scholarship. It takes you investing time, getting on Google, getting on YouTube, identifying things that you like watching, that you like doing, that you see yourself performing, and like JC said earlier, that bring you some kind of satisfaction and some kind of joy. Don't be afraid of not having the education. Don't be afraid of not having certifications. Don't be afraid of not having those things to participate and to put yourself out there. Because some people, and yes, some people are going to expect some kind of degree. Like if you're a doctor, you're probably going to have to get a degree. But this is InfoSec. Most of the companies, big corporations that I know, including my own, focus on the hunger. If you are hungry to learn, if you are hungry to do that one thing, we can teach you everything else. And I consider that for myself every day. I am always learning, that always learning, because that adds to my unique, diverse profile. That adds to who I am and the variety of different types of diversity of thought that I can bring to a conversation. I think I'm over my time here and I'm getting like notifications, but I would love to answer any questions. If you want to throw questions into the chat, be fearless when it comes to who you are and who you want to be and what you want to see in the world, what culture you want to help build. We can't do this without you.
Ooh, all right. That was a lot of passion, a lot of stuff. Amazing talk. We've got a lot of folks here commenting on a lot of the things that you said here. But our good friend Carlos says, find your passion, find your interests. And that is definitely a very, very interesting point of the diversity of thought. So thank you very much. You're getting a lot of claps and stuff. So
Just real quick to Yaga, I've definitely seen Fortune 100. Amazon, Google, and Microsoft are all taking that in, particularly when it comes to cybersecurity talent. So if you're looking for that and you have experience that you've learned from, YouTube or wherever, or just breaking systems and putting them back together, apply, and let yourself prove yourself by what you actually know, not what is on some piece of paper.
yeah, the only question I've seen is this one.
Oh dear. Okay. Okay, I'm going to answer this because it's actually it's a thing. Okay. So, generally speaking, I liked the movie because the director and the actor spent a lot of time focusing on the human aspect of what it is like to be an EOD tech, right? And probably anybody who's been deployed ever, right? When you do multiple deployments and you're doing a crazy job and your stress level is entirely, peaked out all the time because that's your job, then I'm coming back to that. Hold on. Then it changes your perception of things. So, like when you come home, and I will never forget the scene where he's walking through the grocery store and he's like, "My God, I'm bored out of my mind," because you get used to your adrenaline being up all the time. In fact, I just spoke to another EOD tech yesterday for a mentoring session who has a great job now that he's out and he's bored out of his mind. So I thought that was great. However, I thought the execution of the details of the story were a little bit far-fetched. You're never gonna have EOD techs with pistols knocking on people's doors and doing investigations. It's not gonna happen. So micro credentials. I think that there's a really great push forward in LinkedIn Learning, for example, where you can take small courses and identify on your profile that you have the skill now. I think those are great, but I think they're great not because you can put them on your resume, but because um, you're learning, right? Any kind of learning that you do, again, whether it's YouTube, whether it's LinkedIn Learning, whatever it is, do it because you want to learn it, not because you want to put it on a piece of paper.
Well, thank you very much for everything. And thank you very much for being here and give us this inspirational talk. Thank you very much, Keenan.
Absolutely. Thank you
Love
for
you.
having me.
Thank you.